Ever since I was young, my parents taught me to cherish my belongings. Cherishing what you have not only makes it last longer, but also fosters a sense of attachment. Looking back, I realized that what they were really teaching me was to value this mindset and sensitivity. Because I held on to that sentiment, I'm happy now. My name is Michael, and after graduating from college, I joined a major real estate company in my hometown. I was assigned to the sales department, but being in a regional branch meant I had to do various tasks beyond sales, such as property management, guiding tours, and negotiations. Despite the busy days, I managed because of my girlfriend, Laura, whom I've been dating since college. We've been together for almost 4 years, planning to marry once my job stabilized. Michael, can you take care of this too? Isn't this your task? I've got a negotiation and a tour to guide right now. Sorry, but please handle it. Oh, come on. Though I often ended up dealing with tasks like these, not just from Jack but other colleagues too. I worked hard, knowing my overtime pay was solid and saving for the future. My only moments of relaxation are the dates with my girlfriend and eating fried chicken at the diner I frequent the day after payday. It's not that the diner's meals are expensive, but their fried chicken, which I've been eating since I was a kid, holds deep memories for me and remains something special that I savor even now. I don't waste money on anything else. I diligently save for the future. I've always been one to take care of my belongings. I still wear clothes I bought in college and keep furniture clean and well maintained. However, Laura often complained about this. Really, you still have that outfit? Let's get something trendy. What? But it's still good. I don't want to go out with you looking so outdated. Buy something new online. So she'd complain about my clothes and furniture being old-fashioned or stingy. Since starting work after college, Laura developed a taste for new things. Growing up with older siblings, she was used to hand-me-downs and became drawn to new items once she had her own money. Yet she'd quickly lose interest. This wasn't what I expected. Maybe I'll sell it on a resale app. Selling things shortly after buying them on resale apps was a point of disagreement for us. I intended to get everything new for our marriage, but constantly replacing items would drain any amount of money. Even with resale apps, expenses would only grow. I hoped Laura would eventually see the downsides and learn to cherish what we have. But that day never came. One day, a property viewing I was responsible for, thanks to Jack, got suddenly canceled. When I informed my boss, concerned about my recent workload, he gave me the afternoon off. With a rare free afternoon, I thought of inviting Laura to a movie. But she didn't respond to calls or messages. Knowing she was off, I went to her apartment. There, I saw something unbelievable. The company car was parked in the visitor's lot I use when visiting Laura. Feeling a sense of foreboding, I watched from a distance and saw Laura coming down the stairs of the apartment. Next to her was Jack, with his hand around her waist. Jack had dumped his work on me to secretly meet with Laura. Moreover, he had lied to the company, claiming he had a meeting with a seller. Unaware of my instant presence, the two of them headed towards the company car. It seemed they were quite accustomed to this, as Jack often seemed to have Laura in the company car. Overwhelmed and unable to act, all I could do was watch as the car carrying Jack and Laura drove away. Later, it came out that Jack had been using the company car for personal use and he resigned from the company. Of course, I was the one who reported it. The dashcam had clearly captured Jack's secret meetings with Laura. I confronted Laura with the evidence and initiated our breakup. Instead of apologizing, she mocked me. "You're such an old-fashioned guy, I'm better off without you." With those words, she ended our 4-year relationship and walked away. Finding out about her affair with Jack was a shock. but I kept telling myself it was for the best to have ended things before marrying someone capable of such actions. To forget her, I threw myself even more into my work. Months after the breakup, as I began to recover from the disappointment, a turning point came my way. It was raining that day, and the pedestrian bridge I used on my way home was slippery. Displeased with the wet conditions underfoot, I heard a sound like someone falling amidst the noise of cars driving on wet roads as I descended the stairs. Turning around, I saw an elderly lady had fallen at the bottom of the stairs. "Are you okay?" Without thinking, I called out, and the elderly lady, crouching down, whispered in a faint voice, "It hurts, it hurts." I immediately arranged for an ambulance and picked her up to keep her dry. Remembering a shop nearby, I covered her with my jacket and ran. Fortunately, the diner I frequented was open, and I rushed in with the elderly lady. The female clerk was taken aback when I suddenly burst in. I explained the situation to her and helped the elderly lady into a comfortable position for her sore leg, making sure she stayed still. After a while, the ambulance arrived, and the elderly lady was taken to the hospital. Perhaps the pain had subsided, as she was able to communicate clearly with the paramedics. Surprisingly, the female clerk insisted on accompanying her in the ambulance, and I, being easily persuaded, left the elderly lady in her care and watched the ambulance leave. It might have been fortunate that I handed my business card to the elderly lady when asked for my name just before she and a clerk got into the ambulance. A few days later, the elderly lady visited the branch where I work. When I instinctively stood up, she laughed amusingly and sat down at the desk I was managing. It turned out her injury was minor, just a light bruise on her leg. According to the paramedics, my actions in immediately moving her indoors to a dry place and keeping her still prevented the injury from worsening. After a round of thanks and polite exchanges, the elderly lady expressed her desire to be shown around some apartments. I promptly introduced her to suitable listings and arranged for a viewing. The apartments were senior-friendly, with elevators and barrier-free access in all rooms. When I mentioned that hospitals and supermarkets were nearby, the elderly lady nodded in satisfaction and said she would like to sign a contract later. A few days later, the elderly lady returned to the store, but this time she was not alone. The woman by her side was beautiful and seemed somewhat hesitant and troubled. The elderly lady said, "This time, I'd like to show my granddaughter the apartments." It turned out the elderly lady wanted to buy an apartment for her granddaughter. The elderly lady appeared to be wealthy and had initially visited me for this purpose. Misunderstanding that she was the buyer, I had shown her properties suited for the elderly. When I hurriedly apologized, she smiled and said, "I couldn't bring myself to interrupt you when I saw how hard you were trying to find the right property for me." While we were having this exchange, I tried to find properties that met her requirements, but the granddaughter, the key person in question, was too reserved to make a decision. Since the conversation wasn't progressing, they decided to come back another day and left. As the granddaughter greeted us politely, I didn't think much of it and simply saw them off. On the weekend following payday, my first day off, I headed to my favorite diner, looking forward to my usual treat. In the early afternoon, when the diner was quieter, I took my usual seat by the window, ready to order the fried chicken set I always enjoyed. I was startled when I saw the female clerk who came out from the back. It was the same woman who had visited with the grandmother the other day. "Nice to meet you, actually. We've met before, haven't we? I'm Emily. Thank you for your help the other day." As she smiled warmly at me, I was too surprised to say anything, and then Emily began to explain the situation. This diner was run by her late grandfather. It seems her grandfather passed away at a young age, and her grandmother managed the diner while raising her daughter by herself. Perhaps due to her efforts, the diner became successful, and the stocks they invested in also paid off. Now of a certain age, the grandmother, has retired. She is currently a wealthy investor, actively trading stocks. The diner is now managed by Emily's mother, the grandmother's daughter, and the clerk who had accompanied the injured grandmother in the ambulance that day was Emily's mother. So, what about you? I'm mainly in charge of cooking in the kitchen, making my grandmother's signature fried chicken and other dishes. Both she and her mother knew me well. I have been a regular customer since childhood, visiting at least once a month during high school, college, and even after becoming a working adult. Not to mention that helping her grandmother was the decisive factor. That's why she greeted me politely in the restaurant. Given the presence of other customers, I was invited to the break room during their 3 p.m. break time, where both she and her mother expressed their gratitude again. It seems her mother was too panicked at the time of the incident and only realized my involvement after her grandmother's condition stabilized. While the three of us were talking, Emily's mother dropped a bombshell, revealing that I was the inspiration behind Emily's decision to start making fried chicken. Back in high school, when Emily was still in junior high, she admired how I enjoyed their fried chicken, which motivated her to want to make fried chicken that could bring such joy to others. Beside her fast-talking mother, Emily was desperately trying to change the subject, her face turning bright red, which was quite memorable. Emily shared that her dream was to one day launch her own fried chicken food truck. She spoke shyly about wanting to perfect her grandfather's fried chicken recipe and share it with people everywhere, and there was something radiant about her as she said this. Working in the diner's kitchen was part of her training for that dream. There's actually another reason I called you here. With that, Emily headed to the kitchen and returned with a tray. On top of that, there was the fried chicken set I always ordered, but the colors seemed a bit different. Instead of pepper, the accompanying sauce was tartar sauce. I made a new version. Would you mind giving me your feedback? I was thrilled to try the fried chicken set. The seasoning was similar to what I usually had, but the coarse ground pepper gave it a stimulating flavor. It paired wonderfully with the tartar sauce. When I shared my thoughts on the taste, Emily earnestly took notes in her notebook. After I finished the set, Emily asked if I would be willing to taste test again, and I happily agreed. Grateful for my help, they insisted on not charging me, and I left the diner that day. Seeing Emily's determination to pursue her dream warmed my heart, but on my way back, I encountered someone I wished I hadn't. I saw Laura walking with a tough-looking man. And it wasn't Jack. He had a dangerous aura, clearly different from the average person. Laura, arm in arm with this man, seemed like a completely different person. According to a mutual college friend, Laura had been frequenting clubs and hanging out with shady people, apparently cheating all along. Even while she was with me. When they heard we had broken up, they couldn't wait to spill everything, almost in disbelief. I felt a profound sense of relief that I hadn't ended up marrying such a person. Emily and I, sharing a love for fried chicken, hit it off well. Instead of just before payday, I started visiting the diner on days off and before holidays. When I visited on a day off, it was almost as if they were waiting to take me to the back for a tasting session of new fried chicken recipes. As we exchanged various opinions, I found myself drawn to Emily's personality. One day, her grandmother came to my workplace asking to be shown some real estate catalogs for apartments. I immediately arranged it and drove her in a company car to the desired apartment complex. The apartment was newly built with excellent security, and it was reasonably priced. After the viewing, as we returned to the car, I asked her, "What did you think? It's a new apartment, so it must have been nice, right? Perfect for Emily," I thought. I had chosen this apartment assuming the grandmother intended to buy it for Emily. I also hoped Emily would live somewhere with good security, but the grandmother's response took me by surprise. "Yes, it would be perfect for you and Emily to live in," she said. I burst out laughing. Later, I learned that Emily had had a crush on me since high school. Both her grandmother and mother were aware, but had only supported her silently until now. However, my act of helping the grandmother confirmed my good character, and with her taking a liking to me, they began to actively set the stage. I wasn't entirely opposed to the idea, and spending time with her felt meaningful. However, this meant I had something important to tell her grandmother. "Grandma, I'm afraid I can't sell this apartment to you." "Oh, why is that?" "Because I'm dating Emily and plan to buy this apartment myself in the future." When I said that earnestly, the grandmother laughed and replied, "I knew you would say something like that if it was you." That night, I rushed to the diner and confessed my feelings to Emily, who was busy preparing a test batch of fried chicken in the kitchen. After 2 years of dating, I proposed to her. Of course, it was in the very apartment I had promised her grandmother. To commemorate our special occasion, Emily and I decided to take her grandmother out for a meal as a way of saying thank you. We chose a high-end restaurant in the city, intending it as a gesture of gratitude for all her kindness. But an unexpected incident occurred there. While enjoying our meal and conversation, a woman suddenly approached and started talking to me. When I glanced over, I immediately recognized who it was. Despite the unbelievably flashy hair and clothes, there was no doubt it was my ex, Laura. She was smirking at me, accompanied by a man with a rather imposing appearance. At a fancy place like this, even a poor person in tattered clothes can dine, she said as her opening remark, leaving me speechless. 3 years after our breakup, she was still mocking me. Anger surged within me at Laura's taunts, but with Emily and the grandmother present, I felt it was wrong to involve them in my past grudges, so I remained silent. What was supposed to be a celebratory occasion turned sour. Feeling sorry for the two who were unaware, Emily suddenly exclaimed, "Ah," and stood up, pointing at Laura's boyfriend, who had been mocking me with her. "Grandma, this man, he's Jen, the scam artist." The word scam artist sent a chill through the room. Laura seemed confused by Emily's words, but the man beside her turned pale upon seeing the faces of the grandmother and Emily. "You, how dare you show your face in front of me?" The grandmother's voice, fiercer than I'd ever heard, filled the diner. This was no ordinary situation. Then, the man grabbed a butter knife from the table. Instinctively, my body moved. I grabbed the hand about to swing the butter knife, seized the flashy patterned shirt, swept the feet, and in a flash, I performed a back throw, neutralizing the scam artist armed with a weapon. "Michael, sorry, I just reacted when he grabbed the knife. I practiced Aikido, a Japanese martial art in high school. Moreover, it was quite practical, and I extensively trained in techniques to subdue opponents armed with knife-like object. My clubmates and I used to visit the diner, but neither of them knew I was a black belt in Aikido." Afterwards, the grandmother called the police, and Jin, the scam artist, was arrested. Jin was a leader in a scam group and had previously swindled few thousands of dollars from one of the grandmother's acquaintances. Though a police report had been filed, they never expected him to appear in person. Laura, unknowingly involved with Jin, was also taken in for questioning as a person of interest. Although the celebration took an unexpected turn, with the scam artist caught, it ended well. Emily, impressed by my Aikido throw, blushed and said she fell for me all over again, which made me quite satisfied. The grandmother thanked me, saying I brought luck, and later, we three enjoyed a meal together again. Not at a fancy restaurant, but at the beloved diner. Years after we got married, Emily launched her dream fried chicken food truck. I became the branch manager of a real estate office. Despite our busy lives, our tasting sessions and menu planning with Emily remained fulfilling. Soon, a new family member is expected to join these tasting sessions. Promise me you'll marry me in the future, okay? These were the words a childhood friend said to me when we were in elementary school. Even now, as an adult, I vividly remember her words. We became a couple in high school, but eventually broke up after a fight. Despite that, I've spent 20 years unable to forget my ex-girlfriend. And somehow, I found myself reuniting with her, as if by a miracle. My name is Michael. I'm a long-haul truck driver. I travel all across the country, delivering goods, sometimes not returning home for 2 weeks. After graduating high school, I continued this irregular job, often sleeping in my truck. Before I knew it, I reached this age where more and more of my school friends and colleagues are getting married. After a long drive, when I finally meet my colleagues, they often ask, "Aren't you going to get married?" "I'd like to, but well," I reply with a wry smile. Then, a colleague would look concerned and ask, "What's up? Is something wrong?" "No, it's nothing. Don't worry about it." I responded that way to my colleague and climbed back into my truck. Even to a close colleague, I couldn't share my troubles with love. I do want to get married, but there's someone I can't forget, even after all these years. That person is my ex-girlfriend from when I was a sophomore in high school. It's been 20 years since Ashley and I broke up in high school, and we haven't seen each other since. I know that wishing to marry Ashley, despite everything, is futile. Besides, being hung up on an ex-girlfriend from high school for 20 years would probably make me the butt of jokes among my colleagues. I understand that marrying Ashley is impossible. Yet, whenever I hear the word marriage, I can't help but think of Ashley. Even 20 years after we broke up, I'm still unable to move on due to my lingering feelings for Ashley. Ashley was a childhood friend from elementary school. Our houses were close, and our parents were good friends. After school, we would play together or do homework every day. Meeting up after school or during holidays was a given. Visiting each other's homes and playing was a normal part of our daily lives. Ashley felt like more than a friend. There was a deeper connection. It was in the spring when Ashley and I were in the 3rd grade. Ashley's older cousin got married. Ashley showed me photos of the wedding, with her cousin in a pure white wedding dress. The photos captured a magical world, enchanting me. As I was mesmerized by the photos, Ashley shyly said, "Promise me you'll marry me in the future, okay?" I involuntarily swallowed at Ashley's words. Just imagining Ashley in a beautiful wedding dress made my heart race. Surprised and nervous, I couldn't find the words to respond. After that, our days continued with after-school activities and homework. I believed we would always spend our days together, even in the distant future. But then, a tragic event disrupted our peaceful lives. In our 5th year of elementary school, Ashley's father died in a traffic accident. Following that, Ashley and her mother became withdrawn. I tried to cheer her up, suggesting, "Hey, let's play together today." But she simply replied, "I can't today," turning me down. I wondered to myself, why won't Ashley play with me, and felt down all alone. Then, my mom explained, Ashley is grieving the loss of her father, who was the pillar of their family. Give her some space for now. That makes sense. Ashley's father was incredibly kind and reliable, truly living up to being the family's pillar. At the sports festival, it was Ashley's father who took the lead in preparing the lunch and setting up the camera. Given that such a father was suddenly gone, it's understandable that Ashley would be filled with anxiety. Every time we saw each other at school, I continued to be considerate of Ashley. "I'm sorry for asking you to play the other day. I didn't realize you were feeling down." When I did, Ashley smiled and said, "It's okay, it's tough right now, but let's play together again once I feel better." Though I didn't see Ashley every day anymore, I made sure to be available to hang out during breaks, on her terms. Every time we met during breaks, I kept asking her, "Are you okay? Have you been well?" Ashley always showed me a smile and said, "Yeah, I'm fine," but I noticed something. There were times when her smile was genuine and times when it was forced. The loss of her father meant healing the emotional wounds wouldn't be easy. Quietly, I sensed this just by looking at her expressions. Eventually, Ashley and I attended the same middle and high school. Waiting for the right moment when Ashley's feelings had settled, I told her that I liked her in our sophomore year of high school. She was a significant presence in my life, whom I had loved from afar for years and watched go through hard times after her father's passing. When Ashley and I started dating, I was overjoyed, feeling like I was on top of the world. Ashley laughed happily, saying, "I never imagined I would actually date Michael." "Me neither. It feels like a dream to be dating you," I replied with a smile. Our relationship started off smoothly, but then another event came that would affect us both. Around the same time Ashley and I started dating, her mother remarried. I heard the new husband was someone from her mother's workplace. He had been supporting her mother since her husband's death. It felt like he was in a similar situation to me, encouraging Ashley when she was down. I thought to myself, both Ashley and her mother must have been equally saddened by her father's death. If they found someone to rely on and could be happy, that was what mattered. Above all, as Ashley's boyfriend, I was there to accept all her hardships. I strongly wanted to cherish her even more from now on. However, it seemed that Ashley's mother's new husband had quite different views from mine. Tom, the new husband of Ashley's mother, loved gambling and drinking. He quit his job soon after the marriage and spent his days gambling. He started demanding money for gambling from Ashley's mother, who had become a housewife after the marriage. If she didn't give him money, he would become moody, throw things, and yell. Because of this, Ashley's living situation deteriorated rapidly. When I met Ashley during the spring break of our sophomore year in high school, she looked emaciated. Even when I asked, "Are you okay?" she just looked down. Then, raising her face, Ashley suddenly glared at me and quietly started to complain. "Hey, why don't you spend more time with me? Why do we always meet at the same cafe?" I was puzzled by her unexpected words. "But isn't it better to prioritize studying for exams right now? Plus, we're students. We don't have much money," I explained. Immediately, she began to vent her long-held frustrations, getting angry. "It's always we're students. We don't have money excuses. How long do I have to keep adjusting to you, who has no ambition?" Hearing Ashley's words, I was certain. I had many immature aspects in romance, and it was hard to perfectly understand her feelings. I prioritized studying for exams because I wanted to make her happy in the future. To be honest, I'm just a healthy teenage boy going for puberty. There are many things I'm holding back on, all while thinking it's for the future with Ashley, so I'm restraining myself. She was my first in everything. Because she is so important to me, I thought I didn't want to cause her any more pain. "I didn't realize I was making you hold back so much. Staying with me will only make you unhappy. Let's break up for both of our sakes." For me, this was a major decision. Ashley, crying, angrily asked, "Why are you abandoning me like this?" And so, we ended up breaking up and moved on to our senior year of high school, separated. But she was no longer at school. Worried, I went to her house, but it seemed like no one was there. We had just broken up during the spring break a few days earlier. I had no idea where she had disappeared to. "Hey, have you heard the rumor about your ex-girlfriend?" That's what a friend told me, sharing this story. Apparently, her mom's new husband gambled away all their money, and then, it seems they fled to her mom's family home. Hearing this from my friend made me worry about her. But her cell phone and home phone were unreachable. And of course, I had no idea where her mom's family home was, neither its address nor phone number. I deeply regretted our breakup, but it was too late for regrets. After graduating high school with a heavy heart, I threw myself into my current job. One day, a colleague invited me out for drinks for the first time in years. I don't usually go out drinking, but this time, I made an exception for my colleague's birthday celebration. It was a Friday, and the downtown area was bustling with people. Suddenly, I noticed a woman, shivering like a puppy, holding a menu at a bar. Despite it being November, she was trembling in just a short-sleeved shirt. I thought she seemed to be in trouble, and I took a closer look at the woman, only to realize she was my ex-girlfriend from 20 years ago. The moment I recognized her, I rushed over to her without looking away. My colleagues, wondering what was going on, followed me, asking, "What's up?" Ashley, right. Long time no see." My voice trembled, thinking it might be a mistake. She widened her eyes and said, "Michael, really? You know her? Let's not stand around talking. Let's go into this bar." Cheerfully, my colleagues headed into the bar where she worked. We rode the elevator in silence, feeling awkward until we were seated. Poking fun at me, my colleagues asked, "So, what's the deal with her? Just an acquaintance, or something more?" They laughed. In a quiet voice, contrary to my colleagues' teasing, I said, "She's an ex-girlfriend from 20 years ago." At that moment, my colleagues froze. "What? 20 years ago? How old were you then?" "Now it's awkward for us too. You should have said something before we entered. You guys were the ones who rushed in before I could explain." As I was exasperated with my colleagues, Ashley came over to take our order. "Have you decided on your order?" In a flurry, one colleague said, "Then, let's have one beef burger set. I'll have a pint and beef stew." "This guy will have the beef burger set and a cocktail," he ordered for me as well. "There's no need to decide for me." "Well, we feel more awkward about it," my colleagues admitted. Ashley chuckled and said, "It's all in the past, don't worry about it," and after taking our order, she came back to our table. "Today's a Friday, but it's quieter than usual, so consider this special." Then, Ashley shared the reasons behind our breakup and why we hadn't seen each other for 20 years. Indeed, it was just as my friend had said. Her mom's new husband, an unemployed gambler, demanded money from her mom daily. Eventually, when her mom's savings ran out, she had been saying this to Ashley for a while. "Someday, while he's asleep, let's run away." It seems they were secretly packing their belongings to escape from her stepfather. "Breaking up with you was becoming inevitable, and it truly hurt. I wished you would hate me, so I said terrible things." She confessed, tears streaming down her face, as I silently hugged her. My colleagues, surprised yet listening intently, stayed quiet. "If breaking up was hard for you, you should have just told me that." But I couldn't be honest about my feelings. I couldn't leave my mom behind either. I was still a child, unable to make proper decisions. "I'm sorry for saying things that hurt you," she replied. From that day, we began seeing each other again. Back then, I couldn't stand up to him because he was taking all the money, and I wanted to help my crying mom. Choosing between my boyfriend and my parent was an ultimate decision for me. She said with a bitter smile, "Is your mom okay now?" "Yeah, it took time, but things have finally settled down recently." "Then, let's prioritize our time together from now on. You've put your parents first until now. It's time to reclaim the time lost as a couple." She was shocked. "After 20 years, getting back together, are you sure about me? For 20 years, there hasn't been a single day I haven't thought about you. I honestly didn't think I could ever find someone I loved as much. Will you date me again?" She nodded silently, tears flowing. After overcoming 20 years, we restarted our relationship. This time, I hope to cherish her, considering marriage. Until now, We've both prioritized our families and careers for a long time. That's why I'm hoping we can start to prioritize our time together more. The fact that the marriage I had almost given up on with my girlfriend is now drawing closer brings me immense joy. Even after we parted ways, I couldn't let go, and I'm still working hard today with the goal of marrying her in mind. Hey, dropout. If you can answer this question in 30 minutes, I'll give you a $100,000 bonus. But if you can't, you are fired. These were the words of my boss, the department head Alex, during a mandatory training session that all employees at the headquarters had to attend. Naturally, a buzz spread throughout the large conference room that had become the venue for the training. Especially since many employees were already questioning the bizarre training that involved solving prestigious university entrance exam questions. Suddenly presenting me alone with a difficult question, Alex had already made a bad impression. And by saying he'd give an impossible $100,000 bonus, it was clear to everyone that it was nothing but harassment. Other department heads rushed to stop him, but Alex seemed unfazed. He said it was no problem since I wouldn't be able to solve it anyway. But what the other department heads failed to see was that this wasn't the real issue. The company owns a conference room large enough to accommodate around 200 employees in the headquarters. It's a well-known major corporation in its own right. There's no way it wouldn't emphasize compliance. Alex seemed oblivious to this issue. Frustrated and venting my built-up stress, I sighed heavily and began to tackle the problem confidently. Little did I know how this incident would change both mine and Alex's careers. My name is Ryan. I turned 30 this year, but I've changed jobs more than 5 times, never sticking to one for long. Whether due to being deemed incompetent or not getting along with others, I've ended up resigning from every job. Now, I'm at my 6th company, and it's been half a year. It's one of the longer stints I've had, and I wish to stay peacefully for a longer duration, but I had a premonition that it wouldn't last long. The reason lies in the fact that I haven't been getting along with Alex from the international sales department where I work. Despite believing I'm better suited for less interactive roles, I often find myself in flashy departments like international business, which troubles me. Alex, proud of his prestigious university degree, harbored a prejudice that those without college degrees were lazy failures. However, this was only towards men, as he'd demean academically accomplished women by saying, "A woman's high education only makes her less attractive." I particularly disliked Alex. Having a mindset filled with prejudices is one reason, but there are many other reasons why I find it difficult to deal with. Even past 50 and unmarried, he boasted about his popularity with women and often made inappropriate comments to female colleagues. In an era where compliance is crucial, he carelessly made crude jokes, making female employees uncomfortable. He looked down on male employees without college degrees, taking credit for their work or blaming them for his mistakes. Taking credit for someone else's work, especially when looking down on them, shows a complete lack of pride. Alex, who despises me the most in the department, often makes snide remarks, saying, "How did a middle school dropout get assigned to such a prestigious department using underhanded methods? I don't understand why he mistakes me for a middle school dropout, but more than that, I detest being thought of as someone who used dirty tricks to get here. I would have preferred to work in a supportive role like accounting or administration rather than a high-profile department like international business. But we can always be placed in the department of our choice, so we have to do our best in the department we're assigned to, right?" To Alex's dissatisfaction, he assigned me menial tasks like copying and data entry. I didn't mind the work itself, as I preferred tasks that allowed me to work quietly on my own. However, his attempts to sabotage my work, like spilling coffee on documents or kicking my chair during data entry, were intolerable. Thankfully, my colleagues were aware and supportive. They even appreciated my ability to work accurately despite the interruptions. Emily, a colleague of the same age, seemed to trust me greatly, often coming to me for advice on work matters. Alex seemed displeased by that as well. Emily is the only highly educated female employee whom Alex doesn't belittle with his comments. The reason is that Alex favors her, but Emily pays him no mind. In fact, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say she dislikes him. While no one in the department is fond of Alex, Emily probably dislikes him the most. It's only natural to feel aversion towards a man 20 years your senior making unwanted advances. Emily is not just beautiful within our department, but is considered one of the most attractive women in the entire company. Rumors have it that she was scouted numerous times during her student years. Though I haven't heard it from her directly, and it remains a rumor, her beauty makes it easy to believe such claims. Emily's consulting with me, whom Alex looks down upon as a middle school dropout, fuels his jealousy, leading to even more harassment. In front of the female employees, he ridicules me for being a low-educated dropout and blames me for mistakes that aren't my fault, desperately trying to lower my evaluation. However, no one takes Alex's words seriously since he's disliked by everyone in the department, which only serves to lower his own reputation further. My colleagues say I should talk back, but I see no point in responding to Alex's nonsense that nobody believes. Thinking that talking back would only lead to more trouble, I chose to ignore it, which turned out to be a mistake. The harassment escalated, and eventually, Alex crossed the line. This incident occurred during a company-wide employee training that was said to involve all staff in the headquarters. This all-company training happens once a year, with each department head taking turns being in charge. The responsible department head decides on the training content, supposedly to enhance the employees' skills. This year, Alex, who was in charge, decided to use prestigious university entrance exam questions as the training content. Even if you've graduated from college, it's understandable that many are puzzled because not many can solve the entrance exam questions of prestigious university, which has the highest standard deviation score in America. Doing something like a test doesn't seem to enhance employee skills. When other department heads voiced their concerns, Alex replied, "No matter the age, studying is important. We mustn't forget the importance of effort. If the purpose is to cultivate the ability to make an effort, testing seems pointless. Tests are meant to assess results, especially entrance exams, which are designed to measure abilities." The training seems tailored for Alex to feel superior to those he deems less academically capable. Fortunately, the training's outcome doesn't affect evaluations, so failing to solve the problems isn't an issue. Some employees nostalgically engaged with the questions, but most quickly gave up, seeing no point in attempting them. Achieving a perfect score would bring no recognition, so it's understandable that many lost the motivation to try. If this were a college entrance or job examination, everyone would undoubtedly strive to solve the problems, even without clear understanding. However, for a training meant to improve skills, the lack of practical benefits makes the entire exercise feel like a waste of time. Alex, seeing employees giving up on the problems, taunted them, "Look, you are forgetting the importance of effort." Knowing they'd be mocked, the International Business Department employees pretended to work on the problems, yet Alex still taunted, "Can idiots who can't even solve this handle international business work?" It seems he just wants to look down on others and make snide remarks. Alex, who was patrolling around the desks like an exam proctor, stopped in front of me and handed me a piece of paper. The document contained a lengthy passage in French, leaving me puzzled about what was expected of me, so I looked up at Alex for guidance. Then, with a smug grin, he said, "If you can answer this in 30 minutes, I'll give you a $100,000 bonus, but if you can't, you are fired." A murmur spread through the large conference room, which had become the training venue. It was appalling that he would say such a thing during a company-wide training involving all headquarters employees. Other department heads rushed to stop him, but Alex seemed indifferent. Releasing the stress that had accumulated over time, I let out a heavy sigh and looked over the paper handed to me by Alex. Within 5 minutes, I responded to the question. The task was to translate a long French text, which contained words that were difficult to express in English or unknown to me. The unfamiliar words were likely intentionally incorrect neologisms. In preschools within French-speaking regions, a method commonly employed is phonics, which is used to recognize the rules of pronunciation and spelling in French. Familiar with French phonics, I was able to translate without being stumped by the unknown words. Alex, comparing my translation to the model answer, trembled in shock. "When will the bonus be deposited?" I asked with a pleasant smile, inquiring about the $100,000 bonus. Of course, I didn't seriously expect such a bonus to be paid. However, I couldn't forgive Alex for using the company training as an opportunity to harass me, just because I tend to be quiet. A little harassment directed at me was one thing, but I couldn't overlook Alex using valuable training time meant for skill improvement just to indulge in his sense of superiority. I'm not the type who's particularly driven by a sense of justice. Normally, I prefer to spend my time peacefully, but it seems I had reached my limit with all the harassment up to now. Without realizing it, I had accumulated a lot of stress. "How can a dropout like you solve a problem that I couldn't?" Alex revealed his own failure to solve the problem and yelled, unable to accept that I had solved it. "Dropout. I graduated from Oxford University, you know. I had been insulted as a dropout many times before, but I am not a dropout." I had always wondered why such a misunderstanding had occurred. It seems Alex, having seen my resume, initially judged me based on my numerous job changes and labeled me as a troublemaker. However, the companies listed in my employment history are all well-known firms. Alex must have wondered what kind of educational background someone who doesn't stick with jobs yet works at famous companies each time would have. So, when he checked the education section, it only listed up to middle school. Indeed, the education section only goes up to middle school. Because the school I graduated from isn't in the United States, so in the United States, I'm considered a middle school graduate. Instead, in the self-promotion section, I noted that I had moved to the UK from high school and spent my time there through college. Alex must have misunderstood me as a dropout by only looking at the education section. When I explained this, Alex, unable to use education to assert dominance, complained, "Even so, you're someone who can't endure and quits companies quickly." Indeed, I have changed jobs 5 times in the 7 years since returning to my home country. There were reasons for that. The first time, I resigned because my discussions were deemed too complex and bothersome by others. I didn't think I was talking about anything particularly difficult, but if I couldn't be understood, there was no helping it. The second time, I faced harassment after being accused of getting cocky because of my good performance. If it was just harassment directed at me, I might have endured, but once it started affecting our clients, I had to resign. Being accused of showing off for working hard and being called incompetent for not doing enough led to my 5 job changes. That's why I wanted a job that didn't involve much interaction with people. The copying and data entry tasks that Alex had been harassing me with were actually the kind of work I thought suited me. I had even hoped to spend my entire workday doing nothing but copying and data entry. If Alex hadn't tried to set me up in front of everyone, I would have been content with quietly doing my copying and data entry tasks. What's all this noise? Did something happen? President Johnson, noticing the commotion in the conference room where the training was supposed to be happening, appeared with some executives. The roughly 200 employees went silent as President Johnson showed up. Seemingly puzzled by the sudden quiet after the previous noise, President Johnson asked Alex, the person in charge of the training, what had happened. However, Alex's explanation was a jumbled mess that made no sense. Then, President Johnson turned to Emily, who was nearby and likely knew the situation, for an explanation. Emily thoroughly explained everything from the content of the training to what Alex had tried to do to me, and how I easily solved the difficult problem, concluding, a person like Alex, who looks down on and harasses employees, is not fit to be a department head. Even though Emily was a favorite of his, Alex, unable to take the critique of not being fit for his position, retorted to President Johnson, "You wouldn't believe the words of a woman who's all looks, right? Are you saying my daughter is just a pretty face?" President Johnson's expression turned to one of anger. Daughter. Everyone was shocked. The surprised expressions on the faces of all the International Business Department employees made it clear that no one had known. Alex's face turned pale. Emily, sighing, complained to President Johnson for revealing that she was his daughter. With the situation in chaos, the training couldn't possibly continue. President Johnson ordered Alex to stay at home and told Emily to order some delivery. The training, originally about prestigious university entrance exam questions, turned into a social gathering for improving communication, as commanded by President Johnson. At the start of the social gathering, I found myself bombarded with questions. Why had I kept my Oxford University graduation a secret? Why hadn't I utilized my French skills? Most questions were along these lines, but some people also asked for explanations about phonics in the curriculum at Oxford University. I tried to explain as simply and clearly as possible. As I did, even those who were just listening in seemed to become interested and started asking various questions, to which I responded diligently. Then, Emily suggested, "You might be suited for teaching, you know." Knowing now that she was the president's daughter, the employees quickly made space around us, giving Emily an easier environment to talk in. She mentioned she had wanted to work as a regular employee because she disliked this kind of attention. I never imagined it would be revealed like this, she said with a wry smile, then asked why I had switched jobs so often. I shared the reasons behind my frequent job changes. "You don't seem like the type to change jobs just because of that. I'm good at meticulous tasks, and, though it might be odd to say about oneself, I consider myself diligent. It seems strange to others that I would resign just because I didn't get along well with others. Indeed, it might not have been just because of poor interpersonal relationships that I resigned. I was suffering from depression," I said with a wry smile, and Emily apologized, thinking she had asked something inappropriate. The foreign high school I attended didn't rank students by grades, nor did it award achievements in sports or arts. The environment was thoroughly non-competitive, placing a strong emphasis on diversity. It was a culture of acknowledging and respecting each other's differences and striving to improve together. Perhaps due to this influence, I grew up to be an adult who's very uncomfortable with competition. I tried to share my methods and knowledge with my colleagues, but that made me seem like a troublesome know-it-all. Gradually, this took a toll on my mental health, and I ended up resigning from my last 2 jobs within 6 months. That's when I realized I was suffering from depression, and now I'm able to work thanks to medication and counseling. Emily was concerned that Alex's harassment might have worsened my condition, but my issue was solely with competitive environments. Living abroad, it's not uncommon to encounter racial discrimination and derogatory remarks. Thanks to that, I've become accustomed to ignoring such sarcasm and mild harassment. Alex's behavior fell within the range of what I could ignore, so it wasn't a problem for me. In fact, my doctor mentioned that I might soon be able to stop taking medication as my depression was nearly in remission. Emily flashed a relieved smile, but then she left with a meaningful grin. Later on, a personnel announcement revealed that Alex, who had been suspended, was demoted and transferred. I was also ordered to transfer from the International Business Department to the HR department. Despite saying I wasn't good at interpersonal relations, I was moved to HR. Though I was unhappy, Emily assured me it would be fine, so I somewhat accepted it. Emily was transferred to the secretarial department, preparing to become the next president. Years later, I was promoted to department head. It turned out I had a knack for personnel training, and the employees I trained performed well in every department. After the incident with Alex, the company overhauled its training program, with the HR department taking charge. I was unexpectedly put in charge of employee training, and it turned out to be quite popular. I was worried that my training, being someone who disliked social interactions, would be worse than the one that used prestigious university entrance exam questions. However, one day, when I introduced phonics, which many employees were interested in, their foreign language skills significantly improved. Lately, due to employee preferences, the focus on foreign language skills in training programs has become a significant concern. But Emily is thrilled that improved foreign language skills could enhance the company's profits. I know this because Emily and I recently started dating. She confessed to me after I was recognized for my achievements in personnel development and promoted to department head. Apparently, she had harbored feelings for me since our days in the International Business Department. When I questioned what she saw in a quiet, slightly chubby guy like me, she said my humble demeanor despite my competence was what she admired the most. Though I had my own self-assessment, others seemed to view me as modest. Thanks to Emily's plans for my physical improvement, I've also gotten in better shape, making everything even better. While I was enjoying my happiness, I learned of rumors that I was being considered for the next president of the company. Believing that Emily was destined to be the next president, I asked her if the rumors were true. Emily said nothing had been decided yet. However, the current president seemingly favors me, evidenced by casual conversations about my potential role as president. Emily also expressed doubts about her suitability for the presidency. After all, if I became president, I might end up encouraging competition among employees, right? I too would prefer to avoid creating a competitive environment. Yet the idea of me becoming president was daunting. Seeing my apprehensive expression, Emily laughed and said, "If we could just combine our strengths, we'd be perfect for the role." I couldn't help but laugh along, wishing such a solution were possible. I can't be as outspoken or as decisive as Emily. Even if I were to be appointed as the next president, I resolved to become more assertive to avoid letting the president or Emily down. I might not be able to achieve much on my own, but I have people around me willing to help. For the sake of those kind individuals, I want to ensure I don't let them down. Step by step, I aim not to forget to make an effort to clear each problem that arises. The moment I stepped into my new workplace, I felt like I was in a completely different world. My name is Tom Yates, and I'm 32. I recently switched jobs to a game development company as a programmer. Originally, I was working elsewhere, but due to certain circumstances, I ended up transferring here. I didn't really have a choice in the matter, but on my first day, I honestly regretted coming. One reason was that there were quite a few people who seemed to have it out for me, a mid-career hire. Currently, I'm troubled by the presence of my colleague, Linda. She is 2 years younger than me, at 30. If she stays silent, she's remarkably attractive, with the facial features and body figure of a model. I was surprised to find out she's also a programmer like me. I had assumed she worked in a more public-facing role, like public relations. Essentially, she's my direct senior. Linda seems to have an unusual animosity towards male colleagues. She might have had some difficult experiences in the past, but that has nothing to do with me. Yet, Linda's anger and irritation are currently directed straight at me. It's an utterly unreasonable situation. Thinking I shouldn't have come is understandable under these circumstances. Don't just stand there daydreaming. You're not expecting someone to bring you coffee as soon as you sit at your desk in the morning, are you? This morning, as soon as I arrived at my desk, Linda snapped at me. The worst part is that Linda's seat is right next to mine. I don't think that at all, I replied lightly, and Linda snorted in dissatisfaction. Instead of starting her own work, she kept watching my every move. This happens every morning. Looking for mistakes, nitpicking. Even if it's not a mistake, or if it's not done her way, she exaggerates and gossips to everyone. Because of Linda, I seem to have been labeled as the incompetent team member in this workplace. I'm stuck doing menial tasks and running errands every day. The person who brought me to this company was my middle school friend, Nathan Carter. We went to different colleges, so I don't know how Nathan spent his university days. He founded this game company during his college years and has been here ever since. The first time we got back in touch after a long while was 6 months ago. He asked for my help to improve the quality of the programming team. I joined this company, intending to lend a hand for Nathan's sake. I told Nathan not to give me any special treatment when I joined, because I wanted to interact with my colleagues without any preconceptions. However, Linda has significantly derailed that plan. I'm racking my brain about what to do next. Everyone was saying President Carter poached you from another company, so we were all expecting some kind of genius to show up. But what we got was just an errand runner. Huh? Linda deliberately spoke to me in a loud voice, making sure others could hear. It was obvious to anyone that she was speaking loudly so that the other colleagues could hear her. Responding in anger would be childish. I've decided to ignore Linda's remarks, but her persistence in picking on me is truly relentless. Are you ignoring me? I'm talking to you, Tom. I might be younger, but in this company, I'm your senior. A little respect wouldn't hurt, she said, annoyingly. This must be what they call an annoying nag. I just smiled slightly at Linda and continued to ignore her. As if nothing had happened, I turned on my computer and started my day's work. You better take your work seriously. You'll never catch up to us otherwise, Linda said, sensing my lack of response, and then she left her seat. Finally, I can work in peace. I sighed a small sigh of relief. Hey, you look down, Nathan said. After enduring Linda's sarcasm all day, I was completely drained by the evening. Even though I was out for dinner with Nathan for the first time in a while, I seemed to be lost in thought. Did I look that way? Just a bit tired, I replied. Maybe you're just not used to the air in America anymore, Nathan said with a meaningful smile. From his expression, I could tell he was still holding on to the fact that I had quietly applied to and attended a university abroad. What's with that tone? You still holding a grudge? I asked. Nathan is usually a straightforward and good guy, but he becomes a different person when this topic comes up. It seems Nathan had his own plans. He wanted us to attend the same university and start a company together. That was Nathan's plan and dream. He should have told me something so important sooner. Expecting someone to read between the lines is not how things work here. I went to a university abroad because I wanted to experience something new. I always felt that I fit in better abroad than in America. I'm not very attuned to the subtle emotions of others, so that's what I thought vaguely. But there's another reason I've never told anyone. Because you went abroad for university. My startup was delayed by 2 years, Nathan said, his eyes slightly unfocused from the wine. Hey, aren't you drinking too much? You've never been good with alcohol, I cautioned him as he reached for the wine bottle to refill his empty glass. I only drink like this here, Maybe it's the owner's taste, but the wine and the food are so good that I always end up drinking too much, Nathan said. I couldn't help but agree with Nathan's words. This was the first place Nathan brought me to after I returned to America, and it's a very comfortable place. The creative French cuisine served here is unbelievably delicious. The wine selected to accompany the meal is almost gone from the second bottle. It makes me happy to be praised by Nathan, a young woman's voice said from behind me. Nathan raised his hand slightly towards the owner of the voice. Since I praised you, today's on owner Madison, Nathan joked. The woman laughed from the back of her throat at Nathan's light-hearted comment. A woody fragrance wafted past my nose. Nice to meet you. I'm Chris Madison, the woman said with a smile, peeking at my face. Hearing the name she introduced, I was taken aback. It was because I had seen the name on the contract. Owner Madison is a woman. I had totally assumed it was a man. Surprised too much, my true thoughts accidentally slipped out, and I quickly covered my mouth with both hands. Chris laughed heartily, perhaps finding me amusing. She then pulled up a chair and sat down next to me. It's because my name is Chris. I often get that reaction. Resting her elbows on the table and looking up at me with a mischievous gleam in her eye, she seemed to glare at me playfully. Despite saying she often hears it, she appeared somewhat displeased. But Chris is such a beautiful name for a woman, isn't it? Without any flattery, those words just slipped out. I was surprised at myself. Chris seemed just as surprised, her eyes widening even more. I'm happy even if it's just flattery. Thank you, she said with a smile, looking very attractive to me. Her expressions changed so naturally and sincerely, making her incredibly likable. The one who provided the funds for my startup on a whim was Chris here, so she's also the owner of my company, and she owns this place too, Nathan explained. From Nathan's tone, it seemed Chris was quite the entrepreneur. She must have a knack for business. Yet, she looked younger than us. When Nathan was in college, she might have still been in high school or even in middle school. How she managed to come by enough funds to start a business just like that was a mystery. The mystery only deepened. Don't worry, it's not shady money, Chris said with a chuckle, as if she could read my thoughts. The only thing I've figured out from our first meeting, I said. You've figured out something already, Chris responded, sounding pleased. It made me think she was someone who enjoyed conversation. I've realized you're a woman full of mysteries, I replied. Chris smiled enigmatically at my response. Chris laughed meaningfully at my response. Then, she reached out with her pale hand to the wine glass left on the table. The dim light shone through the red wine, casting a beautiful glow on Chris's pale hand. It swayed gently, looking incredibly elegant. I watched Chris slowly take a sip of wine, vaguely aware of my excitement about what she would say next. Men are silly. Women are made of mysteries. A woman who can be fully understood is hardly worth mentioning, she replied. Her response struck a chord with me. After being nagged and criticized all day, I couldn't help but cherish this moment of enjoyable conversation even more. Hey, am I intruding here? Nathan interjected, sounding a bit disgruntled, as if he felt left out of the conversation between Chris and me. Are we being a bother? Maybe we are. We both responded, causing Nathan to let out an exasperated hey, hey. Unbeknownst to the tipsy Nathan, Chris had discreetly passed me her private phone number as we were leaving. Even after such a wonderful encounter, the same dreary morning awaited the next day. Fortunately, I've always had a strong tolerance for alcohol and have never experienced a hangover. Nathan, who arrived at work a few minutes after me, looked terrible and was slumped over his desk in distress. You drank too much, I told him, placing some Hanover medicine and a bottle of mineral water on his desk. With a hoarse voice from the alcohol, Nathan slowly took the medicine, saying, "My bad," as he did so. "I'd hate to call it a favor, but I'm looking for some information," I said to Nathan, who had just chugged down 500 milliliters of water and was catching his breath. "I can give you any information about Chris. I've been sworn to secrecy," Nathan replied, prompting me to click my tongue in frustration. It seems Chris got ahead of me. Now, figuring out how to approach this situation becomes a troubling dilemma. Nathan is the only reliable source of information I have at the moment. President Carter, hungover again, Linda interjected between Nathan and me. Although Nathan's title is president, his desk is on the same floor as ours. A consideration to make it easier for employees to consult with him. This makes the hierarchical barrier feel lower compared to other companies. Perhaps that's why Linda often talks to Nathan, the president, in a casual manner. "Should I go buy you some Hanover medicine again? Do you need some energy drinks and water as well?" It must be a common occurrence for Nathan to be down with a Hanover. Holding her cute pink wallet in both hands, Linda spoke to Nathan with an exasperated look. "I always feel bad for this, but from today, I'll be fine. I've got my wife here to look after me," Nathan said, pointing in my direction. Back when we used to hang out together, it was always Nathan who got into trouble, and it was my job to clean up after him. I was reminded of how I used to be called his wife. Sure enough, I had unconsciously bought Hanover medicine, prepared mineral water, and even vegetable soup. Linda, who sharply noticed these items lined up on the desk, glared at me resentfully. That expression made me realize her cold attitude towards me might also have something to do with Nathan's presence. "So I'm unnecessary, then. Since I'm not useful for the work, I guess I'll just cover for you with errands," Linda said, folding her arms in front of her chest. Her posture made it clear that she was completely shutting me out. "Well, the underling should learn by watching my work and pick up the skills," Linda said condescendingly, and Nathan looked up at me as if he wanted to say something. I just shook my head slightly in response to his gaze. "I'm always learning from you," I replied with a smile. Feeling that her sarcasm wasn't getting through, Linda clicked her tongue softly and walked away from Nathan's desk. As I watched her retreating figure, Nathan asked, "Is that okay with you?" "For now, it's fine. I have my own plans," I reassured him. Nathan must have felt something, seeing his close friend belittled in front of him. But revealing my true intentions isn't timely yet. I was called back by Nathan to grasp the situation within the company and the technical capabilities to root out any bad elements. I had intended to observe for a while, but circumstances didn't allow for that. The incident began with a phone call. I was the one who answered it. Before I could even mention the company's name, I was yelled at, nearly damaging my eardrum. The caller was that angry. It was from Director Smith, a longtime client to whom we had just delivered a program. Normally very calm, the call from Director Smith was unexpected. I managed to calm him down and listen as he explained that the program we delivered had a significant bug and that a part we had discussed changing during the specification meeting hadn't been altered at all in the delivered product. While listening, I operated the computer to check who was in charge of the project. It was a job handled by Linda's team. Glancing at Linda in shock, I could tell she must have heard the shouting through the receiver, as she was looking at me with a pale face. The client urgently requested a correction, with delivery by tomorrow. Unfortunately, Nathan was out on field work with the sales team. The atmosphere was too tense to even put the client on hold and check with Linda. "Understood. We'll start the corrections immediately," I said before hanging up. Linda rushed over to me after I put down the receiver. "Don't just accept it on your own. There's no way we can meet a deadline by tomorrow. If we fail, our reputation will plummet," Linda's face was pale as she continued to berate me. It seemed like she was maintaining her emotional balance by berating someone else. That's the impression I got. But this is work. There's no room for shifting blame or making excuses. Weren't you the project leader? How do you plan to resolve this? I asked, looking straight into Linda's eyes. She seemed a bit intimidated by my intensity and took a step back. But Linda isn't the type to back down. She quickly regained her composure and yelled back at me. As a project leader, I've estimated it will take several days to fix. Are you holding a grudge against me by promising delivery by tomorrow? Her forcefulness left me breathless. The client seemed to have no time to wait for several days. Bugs are one thing, but a mistake in the specification changes is inexcusable. It's evidence that the project team's coordination was poor. I counted, and Linda bit her lower lip, unable to respond. She must be aware of it herself. We need to address this urgently. If there's anything I can help with, just let me know. What can you do? All you've been good for is errands, like some decorative piece. Linda dismissed my offer, her face still pale as she gave a mocking smile. She seemed intent on belittling me at every turn. Just as I was about to protest, a voice cut in, stealing my line. Well, it's a big mistake, but with Tom here, we'll be fine. I'm glad to have a genius programmer with us. I'm counting on you. It must have been a direct complaint from the client. Chris then appeared in the office. Owner Madison's arrival instantly heightened the tension in the room. Following Chris, Nathan hurried back from his fieldwork. Owner Madison, with all due respect, what makes this man a genius programmer? He hasn't been of any use since he joined until today. Linda spoke to Chris with a tone of mockery. Why don't you see for yourself from now on? At Chris's cue, Nathan started giving orders. He instructed that the program data be handed over to me immediately, and Linda resisted with a shocked expression. President Carter, are you serious? Letting Tom handle the correction instead of me. He won't solve it even if he had a month, Linda protested vehemently. Nathan dismissed her with it's an executive order. With the president's command, Linda had no choice but to comply. Reluctantly, she sent me the data. The mistake in the specification change was a simple communication error, a clear human error. This is something we'll need to improve going forward. I reviewed the program data that arrived. It was likely constructed by Linda. A feminine, beautiful, and flexible program. But within it was an anomaly that seemed to have been intentionally inserted. This I could quickly locate and correct. We can meet the deadline by tomorrow. Please review the changed specifications. Without taking my eyes off the screen, I addressed Linda in that manner. My fingers continued to glide across the keyboard. Linda, who had inhaled sharply as if to defy my words, stopped in her tracks as she watched the code flow on my screen. Overwhelmed by the program I was writing, she kept repeating, "How can this be?" in a faint voice. Why, that's a silly question. Didn't they say they hired a genius programmer? Chris said to Linda, who was taken aback. Then, in a voice loud enough for the other employees to hear, Chris spoke about my background at a major IT company abroad and how I was recruited to improve the current internal situation. I've been hearing about the recent state of affairs inside the company from Nathan. Too many are sitting comfortably at the top, lacking humility and meticulousness in their work. I don't want to invest in a company with such employees. I want Tom to clean house. That's what I'm thinking, Chris said, causing more than one or two faces to change color. This deliberate bug was probably set up by someone to frame Linda. Although Linda has her issues personality-wise, her skill as a programmer is on par with Nathan's. My assessment was that she wouldn't normally make such a mistake. I'll provide the funds. Please resolve this issue promptly, Chris said that, patted Linda on the shoulder, and left the office. She probably went to see the client. Linda, please help me. It's difficult for me to meet the deadline alone. I said to Linda, who was still in a daze. Startled by my words, Linda snapped back to reality. Reluctantly, she sat down beside me and began to work. And she said thank you in a soft voice. It was a voice only I could hear, but I'm sure that's what she said. It turned out to be an all-night effort, but by the time the morning sun rose, we had corrected both the bug and the specification changes. I believe the speed was unparalleled by other companies. My eyes were sore, and my shoulders felt as stiff as steel. You did well. We made it in time. I knew I could count on you, Nathan said, offering me an energy drink. He, too, had bags under his eyes. While we were making the corrections, Nathan had identified and decided on a punishment for the person who had planted the bug. The culprit was a mid-level male employee who was jealous of Linda's advancement. Originally Linda's mentor, he couldn't accept being surpassed in skill and position by his protege. Jealousy is an ugly thing, no matter how you look at it. Did you talk to him about leaving? I asked about the punishment. Nathan nodded quietly. I see. It was evident from his expression that it was a difficult decision for the compassionate Nathan. President Carter, would you like some coffee? Linda offered coffee to the tired Nathan with gentleness. Nathan happily accepted it. Then, without a word, Linda also offered me a cup of coffee. I accepted it with a wry smile, and for once, her usually cheeky eyes softened with a smile. I wish I had a partner who could offer me coffee when I'm tired like this. I'd eased her, and Linda's ears turned red. Don't expect that from Chris. She's useless for anything but making money, Nathan said about owner Madison, but it wasn't meant as an insult. It was clear from his affectionate tone. During the all-nighter, Chris called a few times. She was entertaining the client at that wine place, keeping them in good spirits. Thanks to her, we weren't rushed or disturbed by complaints during our work. It was truly a relief. It's finished, you say. Congratulations. I've finished up on my end too and tossed everything into a taxi. Chris entered the office, seemingly a bit tipsy, her steps uncertain. She handed me a sandwich made by the chef of that restaurant, saying it was a treat. It seems there's soup inside the thermos, which retains heat well. It was a welcome provision for our tired bodies. Looks like you were drinking until just now, huh? All I can do is entertain and spend money to make sure no one complains. Chris laughed, claiming she had no other talents. But thanks to this talent, I was able to forcefully draw my destiny towards me, she said with a smile directed at me. Caught off guard by her sudden remark, all I could do was look puzzled. Linda, intrigued, jumped into the conversation. Are you talking about Tom as your destined partner? Huh. This was news to me as well. Look at Tom's face. He looks like a pigeon that's been shot with a beam. Chris laughed, holding her stomach as she looked at me. What does that mean? With a sly smile, Chris whispered, it's a secret until you remember, and placed her index finger over her lips. After the delivery in the afternoon, I was exhausted and fell asleep in the rest area, where I dreamt for the first time about the day I was leaving for abroad. A girl with a mature face crossed in front of me, being seen off by my parents. Her slender chin and porcelain-like pale skin caught my eye. Then, the girl looked at me and smiled faintly. Do I have enough value to be gazed at like this? Caught off guard by her question, I apologized for staring rudely. Then, I responded, I think you're definitely worth admiring. Thank you, that gives me confidence, she said, sitting down beside me with a thud. Then, she expressed a desire to know more about me. In the short time before boarding, I believe we talked about each other. I was heading to Oxford University, and she was going to the England to learn about her grandfather's business in the financial district, as I recall. I want to live surrounded by things I love, doing what I love. She laughed, stating her only wish. When the boarding announcement came, she stood up and stared at my face. Then she said, "I appoint you as my destined person. I've decided now that you, who called me beautiful, are my goal. Be prepared." The face of the girl who laughed mischievously overlapped with Chris's as I woke up. "Yes, good morning," I startled as Chris's voice came from right beside me. "Did you remember anything about me? It was quite a task to find you. Really? Were you looking for me?" My question came out awkwardly, overwhelmed by surprise. "Oh yes, I spent a fortune hiring 6 detectives. All I had was information about Oxford University." Chris laughed, then confided in me about her next plan. "The second phase of the plan is to make you fall in love with me." She said this with a serious face, even though that stage had long been surpassed. How should I convey this fact to her? What kind of expression would she have when I tell her? Excited, I carefully chose my words, hoping they would be the best possible answer for her.